House sending a stern warning to Syria. Last night, Press Secretary Sean Spicer releasing this statement saying, quote, the United States has identified potential preparations for another chemical weapons attack by the Assad regime that would likely result in the mass murder of civilians, including innocent children. It goes on to say, as we have previously stated, the United States is in Syria to eliminate the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. If, however, Mr. Assad conducts another mass murder attack using chemical weapons, he and his military will pay a heavy price. General Keane, a message like this, could it help, first and foremost, could it help prevent another chemical weapons attack like the one we saw in April?
Well, certainly, any kind of stern message, they know that we're going to react to this. And let's set the table, you know, for our viewing audience here. The Iranians are running the war in Syria. The generals are on the ground. They control ground operations, and they direct all air operations. The Russians are in total support of that. So if he is going to use chemical weapons again, it would only be done if the Iranians want it to be done and with the permission of the Russians. And if that happens again, what I believe our president should do as commander-in-chief, there are 6 airfields that are operating in Syria for the Syrian Air Force, and we should take all 6 of them down and take all the infrastructure down once and for all and eliminate any possibility of their ability to fly another airplane again from the Syrian Air Force.
And you think we should act preemptively, assuming that our intelligence and our information...
No, I don't think we should do that until we know for sure they're going to do it. And now, if we can catch them in the act of doing it, we should do that. But if they do something like that, then certainly we should take stern action. If we know they're doing it and we actually got them loading it, you know, onto the airplanes and bringing them out of the storehouse and the rest of it, then absolutely react preemptively.
What are the knock-on effects, though, with Iran and Russia? What kind of conflict are we then drawn into if we took out those 6
We
airfields?
should not be concerned. This is the thing that paralyzed President Obama for 8 years. He always was paralyzed by the fear of what you're talking about here, adverse consequences. Those consequences were always on his mind. Think about what he said to us. He said it took moral courage for him not to attack Assad when he violated the chemical red line in 2013. Right. He said that was moral courage, not to attack. Can anybody look at that and come to the same conclusion that he came to after Assad used chemical weapons against 3 or 4 times under his administration and once under Trump's administration, and he reacted strongly to that fact? The reality is here, when people are using weapons of mass destruction like this, you cannot let them get away with it. This is a pariah on the world. This is about civility. This is about morals and values and humanity. And we have to act. We have the capability to act, and the world would want us to act as well.
And the Obama administration chose diplomacy over military action, which clearly did not work, because here's where we are today. And Assad even violated that diplomatic agreement before the ink was even dry in terms of attacking his own people with chemical weapons.
Yeah, the Russians, you know, Putin's a smart guy, and he's always had, I think, President Obama's number, to be frank about it. He intervened. He saw Obama waffling when he said, let's go to the Congress and talk about it. And Putin comes forward and says, look, we can get Assad's weapons out of there. And as soon as that offer was made, every analyst I know knew for a fact that Assad would never, ever get rid of all of his chemical weapons, despite all the rhetoric from Secretary Kerry, despite the rhetoric for Obama, and it turned out to be the case. We always knew to be 10, 15% of those weapons would still be there, and at some time he would use them. And he's used them 4 or 5 times since then.
I want to talk about the renewed push for more defense spending. The head of the Armed Services Committee, Texas Congressman Max Thornberry, wants $705 billion total for the military in 2018. That's more than $100 billion over what President Trump even requested. Congressman Thornberry's proposals earmark $640 billion for core Pentagon operations, $65 billion in addition for war-fighting missions. Thornberry arguing that the money is badly needed to modernize and restore our military readiness. What do you think?
Yeah, let me tell you what's going on here. This is pretty interesting. Mulvaney's the O&B director.
Yes, sir.
You know, he's a deficit hawk who became the O&B director. And I think he tried to create a situation where he would help defense a little bit, but not quite to the degree that President Trump did in his campaign and promising the military he was going to restore the military's readiness and restore its future capabilities. So the chairman of both the House Armed Services Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee totally agree. It's quite unprecedented. They've taken President Trump's budget, which is $603 billion for defense, and both of them agreed it should be $640 billion. The $603 billion that President Trump's budget is only 3% above the forecasted budget that President Obama had recommended. And that is totally inadequate. So they're looking at President Trump's budget and say, we can't get there. We're not going to restore the military with that kind of budget. So both chairmen of the Armed Services Committee, Senate and House, agree. And it's quite unprecedented. And they're going to up the president's budget. Now they have to convince their members in the House and in the Senate to go along with them.
And this comes as our top military officer in Afghanistan this morning. They're finalizing plans to bring in several thousand more troops. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joe Dunford, arrived yesterday to work on a strategy to break the long-running stalemate with the Taliban in the country. Now, this is, again, a major departure from the Obama administration's policy, but it kind of speaks to defense spending as well, does it not?
Well, the problem in Afghanistan, Dagan, I mean, I think it's outrageous. 16 years America's been involved in a war, and we haven't won it by now. And when you actually analyze it, I won't go through all the details for our audience, but fundamentally the fundamental reason why we have not ended this war is because we have never put in play all the resources that were necessary to win it. For 5 years, from 2003 to 2008, the priority was Iraq. We were fighting a war that we didn't expect to fight after we invaded and deposed Saddam Hussein. During those 5 years, the Taliban reemerged. And then from 2008 to the present, Obama never put in the total resources that were necessary. Generals McChrystal and Petraeus recommended to him a total force that they needed to win. They said, this is the minimum force we needed to win. He cut it by 25%, and then he took that force out 15 months later. We were protracted to absolutely not winning as a result of that decision. And then the sanctuaries that the Afghan Taliban have are in Pakistan. And as long as those sanctuaries stay there, we can't win.
At this point, is it winnable?
Yes. If the president's got to, tell the American people why this is important, and President Obama didn't do that for 8 years, and then 2, put the resources in to get the job done.
General, it was good to speak with you on all of these issues, as always.